Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Hump Day edition of the Yard. Hope things are well with you wherever you are today. I'm sure many of you have been riveted by the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case. Well, that's finally over. So whether you were keeping up with it or not, I'm sure everybody is glad that it's over. There have been so many comical moments that have come out of the proceedings that a lot of people have had a lot of fun with that on social media. But at the end of the day, it's a very serious matter. You know, there's some things that have happened that people have gotten a good chuckle out of, but it's a very serious matter on both sides. A lot of very serious allegations levied from both parties. And jury finds in favor of Johnny Depp. Amber Heard awarded $2 million based on a false report, what the jury deemed to be a false statement about her as far as arranging a crime scene and then calling 911. But Johnny Depp believed on all counts of his defamation case. So there we go. Guys, I've been a Johnny Depp fan for a long time. You know, and so when all this first came out, I was very troubled by that. I was like, hey, it's difficult to believe this. You know, and then, of course, they pull the curtain back and you kind of get to see that a lot of these Hollywood types deal with the same problems we do, just they've got a little more money to do it. They take nicer vacations and live in nicer homes, but it's still a life on life terms deal for all of us. So there we go. There is some sports news to report. We're going to talk some baseball today. It's comings and goings at Mississippi State. You know, for every player that leaves, there's one that comes in. So I'm going to provide a little context as best I can to that. Also, Mississippi State welcomes 17 new scholarship football players to the class. The guys showed up yesterday. There was one exception. That was Dontae Russell, and he got there today, I believe. I think today is the day, like the last day to be here. And, of course, you know, his living situation probably is much less complicated than perhaps our incoming players because Dontae Russell's older brother, DeMonte Russell, already here. I suspect he's living with him. But all that said, it's getting time. You know, it's like everybody else is in the middle of college baseball, and we would love to be. But there are still some things that are happening on the Mississippi State campus. We just wrapped up a Super Regional in softball, of course, and now here we go. We've got some new Bulldogs here in town. And so let me just kind of bring you up to date on who that is. You know, maybe you have not really paid attention to that. So let me kind of get you up to date. First things first, Mississippi State batting 1,000 when it's come to getting guys in school for summer school. That used to be a rare thing. It was a big deal if you could get guys here for the first session of summer school. I remember we were so amazed. It's like, wow, these guys graduate. Next thing you know, they're on a college campus. Well, then the early enrollment thing became an issue. And so in the last couple of years, of course, they have eased the NCAA clearinghouse standards a little bit because of standardized testing. And so you're not seeing as many non-qualifiers. Another reason you're not seeing many non-qualifiers is because of the hard 25. You only get 25 for the year. You say, but Steve, that's always been the case. Well, no, not necessarily. It was kind of a sliding number. Because of the fact, let's say you signed 25 in February and then 2 didn't qualify. Well, you got those 2 grants back. You could maybe sign some JUCO guys in December and count them under that annual 25 allotment. Nowadays, nope. You sign a non-qualifier, you've lost that scholarship. You sign a guy that opts to go play pro baseball, you have lost that scholarship. And so you're just simply not having those things happen. So let's take a look at who got here. You know, so there were 11 members of the 28-man class were here in January. That seems like it just kind of slid onto the radar. It's like you don't even think about the fact that there were 11 new Bulldogs that went through spring football and scholarship. Remember, it used to be a rare thing. We had double-digit players, and some of that is a product of the NCAA transfer portal. But you also had a handful of guys that just were able to graduate in December and come on, including defensive lineman Jacarius Clayton from Tupelo. Not just a big body that can move, but a guy that can make the grades. Quarterback Braden Locke from Rockwell, Texas. You know, last year we talked about, Sawyer Robertson. If he had been here, as a true freshman in January, perhaps he makes that a 3-man race in the fall last year. Of course, it was Levertich and Rogers. Braden Locke, I don't expect him to make it a competitive fight this year, but he will benefit from having that extra spring. He was here as well. Percy Lewis, of course, DeCarlos Nicholson, both highly recruited junior college players out of Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, and they were here in spring practice. And a lot of good reviews about both. Nobody at this point's got them penciled into the starting lineup, but both will play a significant amount this year. That left tackle spot might be the only battle really left when it comes to your Bulldog offense heading into the fall. Think about that for a second. You're like, oh, we've lost it. No. You're going to return your offense pretty much intact with the exception of losing Charles Cross and Ncaa Polk. I think we already know who the receiver will be. Will they match that same level of productivity? Don't know about that. But there's not a lot of position battles on the offensive side of the football. Wide receiver Norris Hopson, also a high school early graduate, shows up out of Horn Lake, and he was here during the spring as well. Adding with those 5 that signed national letters in 10 of December, you also had 6 transfers make their way over. Former Alabama cornerback Marcus Banks. Don't you know Alabama would have loved to have had him down the stretch? And it's weird to think that he's like, I'm done. Coastal Carolina kicker Massimo Biscardi. Now, there may not be a more significant signing for this year than Massimo Biscardi. And that got committed a long time ago and just didn't talk in the media. We know the issues we had at kicker last year. This guy was a Lou Groza finalist at Coastal. Watching him in practice, he's just mechanical. It's almost robotic. It's like you watch his mechanics and you watch how he goes about his work. It never looks to be a struggle. It looks to just be a repetitive motion over and over again. If you had Massimo Biscardi last year, you're in a Florida Bowl. Middle Tennessee offensive lineman Stephen Lasoya, we initially kind of considered him a right tackle prospect. He will be a guard now in this scheme now that we've seen him in the spring. But he was here, and they got 2 that we expect to have some depth, got 3 years to play. West Virginia, he'll be a safety for us. He was a corner for them, Jackie Matthews. They're really high on him. They think he has a real chance. And, of course, State adds a couple wide receivers, and Jordan Mosley from Northwestern, and then Justin Robinson from Georgia. And you see Robinson out there sometimes, and you look at him and say, we don't have anybody like him. And then they snap the ball, and you're like, well, where's Robinson? And then the next time, it's like they run the fade, and you think, how could anybody ever guard this guy? So he is a little bit inconsistent, kind of hides at times. It'll be interesting to see what kind of fall he has. But those 11 players all went through spring practice. So you got to feel like they've kind of got a leg up on things. But let's look at the newcomers, and there's not as much to talk about with these guys, but you had 15 new players that have shown up this week. Trevion Williams, 4-star defensive lineman out of Crystal Springs, the best defensive player in the state of Mississippi for the 2022 class. Former Ole Miss commitment Marquez Dortch from George County. Xavion Thomas, wide receiver from Marrero, 4-star. Linebacker Javay Gilmore out of Amite, Louisiana. He was the guy that committed at Top Dog Camp and never looked back. LSU wanted him as a tight end. He wanted to play linebacker, and we got him. Linebacker Khalid Moore, I absolutely love him. I think he is one of the most unheralded players in the class. I love this linebacker class. I do. It is the best linebacker class I'd say we've had in 4 or 5 years. Maybe the year we got Jet and Aaron Brule and Nathaniel Watts and all those guys. Yeah, and that's been a productive group. I think this group is probably as good or better. Offensive lineman Lucas Taylor, one of the heroes of the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game for Alabama. Got out there and shoved some people around. And, of course, defensive end Don Terry Russell, wide receiver Caden Pope. A bit of a surprise commitment in some respects. A lot of people thought Tennessee would go full bore on him. And just one day out of the blue, I got a message from one of my contacts up there and said, hey, there's a rumor going around he's going to commit to State. We start chasing the rumor, find out there's some legs to it. 3 days later, he's a Bulldog. Valedictorian, scholar, gentleman, football playing aficionado Trent Singleton from Rainman High School. Really excited about Trent. Trent's the kind of guy you take to media day. Safety Wesley Miller out of Heritage Academy. People forget what a big get that was. I mean, we offered him pretty early, and everybody's like, oh, it's just some kid from Heritage. And the next thing you know, he's got a dozen Power 5 offers. And you're like, oh, we got to get this kid. Well, we did. Linebacker Avery Sledge. We have built a program on players like him. Kind of unheralded guys, from kind of off the beaten road recruiting stops. I have had some people compare him to Bernard McKinney. Now, I don't know if it's just because of the fact he was a quarterback that also played linebacker that draws those comparisons out of people. But Avery Sledge is a superior athlete. Probably a year or two away from really contributing, but I think that he is a guy that we'll look ahead on. Again, I told you I love this linebacker class. Cornerback Davian Collins out of Covington, Georgia, an early commitment from Mississippi State. A little bit shorter than the typical corners that we get. I'm eager to kind of see how he fits. I was a little surprised that there weren't more schools that went in on him later. Defensive tackle Calvin Dinkins. People forget Florida offered him late too. This is a guy that didn't have a whole lot going on, committed to Southern Miss, and then kind of benefited from a great senior season. And this is the kind of guy that we've also built a defensive front around. This is a guy too, kind of that typical Cameron Young, Caleb Ewells type. Just a guy that can get in there and fight in the trenches. Maybe he doesn't fill up a stat column, but a guy that makes plays for you. That's Calvin Dinkins. Offensive lineman Jackson LaHue. I love this guy's game. I watched his film, really got excited about that. When he got ready to commit, I said, you know what, we're going to be okay here. And then Jackson Cannon, a guy that fell in love with the Mississippi State campus as an underclassman, came on a campus visit with some teammates and said, you know what, if I ever get a chance to play here, it's where I'm coming. Well, here he is. In addition to those high school players, and there were 15 new ones, there were 2 more transfers that made their decisions during the spring semester. George Jarapolis, former UMass punter, and then Florida State defensive back Hunter Washington, also a 4-star out of high school. So that's your situation there. And so, we've talked about Dakota Jordan. There's a lot of discussion that he is going to sign a pro baseball contract, so you don't sign him. If he gets to the draft and you still got a spot available, maybe in August, maybe you put pen to paper then and you add him. But there's a good chance at this point he won't enroll for college courses this year. There leaves you 2 scholarships to work with. Now, here's the deal. The chances of you finding somebody this late to make you a better football team this year pretty slim. But you continue to work the portal a little bit this month. Maybe you see, you're going to bring in a couple guys on official visits. Of course, we got a lineman out of El Camino Community College coming in for an official. Got to kind of fight through some other competition there. But you may not sign 2 more this summer. You may hold those 2 grants and use them in December. So we'll see. We talked before, we'd love to get another tackle, and we would. We're not going to sign a big body just to sign one. It's got to be somebody that can play here. We'd like to get another safety, but the chances of getting an impact guy at this point, probably not very good. So if you can find a couple of guys that are just kind of best available, so that may not make you better this year, maybe make you better in the next year or 2, you would go do it. But I think it's one of those situations you don't want to just go throw grants out there at people just to throw them out there. All right, let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I love Bulldog Burger Company. I love them more than a friend. And I have enjoyed their fine cuisine for many years now. You will too. You will absolutely love them. There are a lot of places you go and it's like, it's okay. It's all right. I don't know if it's a do-over. You go to Bulldog Burger Company, and I'm telling you, bring some people with you. You may not have a choice in the matter next time. You say, hey, where do you guys want to go eat? Let's go to Bulldog Burger Company. Okay. That was a good meal. And it is. It's always a great meal at a great price with great service. Try to say that 3 times real fast. Go by and check them out today. You'll be glad you did. Get that great restaurant quality hamburger. It's one of the great delicacies in life. And maybe you don't feel like a burger, but maybe the kids do. You can have that great BLT salad. I like it grilled. You may like it fried. I got to be careful how I say that. Those Sloppy Joe sliders, incredible. And again, I'm a big fan of that Nashville hot chicken sandwich. If you haven't tried that yet on your next visit, you should. You'll be glad you did. It's outstanding. Get the chocolate shake to go. It's okay to have a little bit of a cheat meal. 3 great locations to serve you. University Drive here in Star Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, and of course, the newest one, Lake Harbor Drive there in the Ridgeland-Flowood area. Be sure and go check them out. Let them know that I sent you. You'll be glad you did. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. Before we get into some transfer stuff, did you guys see the NCAA baseball attendance numbers? Came out a couple days ago. It's number 1 in the nation in cumulative attendance this year. Arkansas, 363,000 people went to go watch a baseball game in Arkansas. And some of you were part of that number. How about that? LSU, second this year, 362.7. Third Mississippi State, 328.3. Just imagine what attendance would look like if we'd had a big year. Wouldn't it be great to lead attendance again? It's been a long time since we've done that. Fourth, Ole Miss, 310,000. So, of course, State kind of a distant third, but also a lot of distance between State and Ole Miss from third to fourth. And number 5, South Carolina, 215. So, yeah, a big disparity between the top 4 schools and then the rest of the country. So, a pretty impressive number. So, hats off to you Bulldog fans who turned out. But, again, huge numbers. We talk about the SEC. It's not just the fact that we play a good brand of baseball. We kind of play a good brand of baseball because people down here care about baseball. So there's an expectation. And then look at Southern Miss this year. I don't know what their attendance numbers are, but yeah, they had great support too. We get it done down here. So there you go. All right, let's talk about transfers. That's been in the news, and there will be a couple more transfers here in the next day or so. I expected them today. They haven't come today. By the time the show airs, maybe they will. Maybe it's tomorrow. But there will be a couple more transfers. Not anybody's going to tear you up. But we love all of our players, but these are not regulars. But so yesterday, Braylen Skinner announced that he was going in an NCAA transfer portal, and I want to take some time to talk about this. First off, I want to talk to you about Braylen Skinner. Braylen Skinner, an outstanding young man. First and foremost, comes from a family of Bulldogs, a guy that dreamed of one day wearing the M over S and running out in the outfield and making plays for Mississippi State. He got a chance to do that. Didn't have the chances this year that maybe a lot of people had hoped for. People forget, Braylen was expected to be the starting left fielder last year. He broke a bone in his hand and missed some time. And it took him a while to kind of get going. He had that big home run against LSU, and everybody's like, now I see it. Now I understand. We don't win that LSU series down in Baton Rouge without Braylen Skinner. He got the home run. He had another RBI base hit that basically gave State a little separation in that game. But Braylen's a guy. Now, here's the thing, too. And I think it's important to understand this. Mississippi State is among the nation's elite in college baseball programs. We didn't have a great year, and I'm not going to chase this rabbit trail long. There's always that guy. There's always that guy in our fan base that can't wait to make the self-loathing comment. Like I'll go write an article, and it's like, hey, this is what Mississippi State is working on, and the State's looking to rebuild the roster. Oh, it shouldn't be a rebuild. Oh, but it is. It is. And Mississippi State wins a national championship. Well, we didn't this year. Oh, yeah, no duh. But here's the deal. We are a national elite program, and there are national expectations from this fan base. You don't come to Mississippi State and expect things to be a cakewalk. We've got great facilities. We've got amazing fan support. We have an amazing commitment from the administration financially. And there is some expectations that goes along with that. We didn't just build a great stadium to have a big party. Contrary to popular belief. We built this cathedral out here because we wanted to attract better players. We wanted to have the most exciting atmosphere in all of college baseball, and we do. But that wasn't just for us. It wasn't just for us to celebrate college baseball and to celebrate our own greatness and say, look at us, and say, hey, look at what we've done. Now, we did that to attract players that will get us up the national ladder. That's why we do it. And so sometimes it's an untidy undertaking. Now, let me share this with you, too, and I have this on good authority. Braylen Skinner was not processed. Braylen Skinner made his decision. Braylen Skinner could be back at Mississippi State next year if that's what he wanted to do. Braylen Skinner wants to play every day. And he's not going to get that opportunity here at Mississippi State. Now, he'd come in and compete for a job, but he's done it the last couple of years, and he's played some. He has. He hasn't played as much. And here's the deal. You've got your last year of eligibility, I believe this would be his last year. So how many years, do you want to be a reserve? And so if it's not going to happen here, you need to go somewhere else to play. We talk about this on the show all the time. You only get a short time in life to play sports. And I would want to be the guy that's like the bench warmer on a championship team. I would rather be a contributor on an average to mediocre team. I want to play. I got my whole life to work. At least if I'm on the field, maybe I catch somebody's eye. Maybe I get a chance at a minor somewhere. You're not going to do that on the bench. And so I'm sure it was a different.
Bulldog fans, if you drive around this great country, you'll see that there is still very much a shortage of quality employees. America's workforce is not back to its full capacity. Not exactly sure for all the reasons, but bottom line is some of my favorite businesses having a reduction in staff, a reduction in hours, and in some cases a reduction in services because they can't find quality applicants. Maybe you're in that situation. Let me recommend our friends at Indeed. It's INDEED.com. Indeed, a hiring partner that can help you find the applicants that best fit your unique skill set. A lot of people out there having to hire people perhaps that aren't the most qualified or perhaps aren't prepared for that job just to have somebody. Go through this screening process with Indeed by using this Instant Match program. One of the best things about that Instant Match program is you get the people that best qualify for your job. And there's some incentive with that too. Go to Indeed.com/Boneyard, and because you're a Boneyard listener, they're going to give you $75 off. They'll give you a credit right there out of the gate. And you only pay for the applicants and the resumes that you use. Use it today. Get your business back to full staffing capacity at Indeed.com/Boneyard.
There are a lot of causes in life to celebrate. Birthdays, weddings, in some cases funerals, graduations, bar mitzvahs, Amerigo Vespucci Day. That's right, look it up yourself. The discoverer of our great nation. And sometimes maybe you don't need a good cause to celebrate. Sometimes you just want a nice evening in with friends. Maybe you're like, the weather's bad, or I just don't want to get out again now that I've gotten home. Contact our friends at Drizzly. That's DRIZLY.com, or download the Drizzly app today. And new customers, if you use promo code SPRING5, that's SPRING and the number 5, you get $5 off your first order. Whether you're looking for beer, wine, spirits, you can have it delivered sometimes in less than 60 minutes. There are a lot of people out there today that say, you know what, Steve, I just don't feel like getting out. I don't want to go out in kind of the hustle and bustle, but I would like to have a nice drink. I'd like to be able to have a chance to relax with friends and family. Let Drizzly.com be your partner in that endeavor. Difficult decision for Braylen Skinner to say, you know what, here we go. So, and I had to pause there for a second. There is some breaking news, and by the time that you read this, you'll hear this, you'll have seen it. Davis Mesh, infielder in the NCAA transfer portal, and Jack Walker, freshman in the NCAA transfer portal. And again, quality young men. It just didn't work out. Jack Walker Jack was a national pitcher of the year last year at high school, and it just never really caught on the year. It just didn't happen. It's like a night and day deal. And so I shared that to kind of give some context too, and I apologize if it seems a little bit disjointed. But here's the thing. Because we are a national elite program, and we have a very demanding fan base, we have a very supportive fan base. And listen, there are a lot of our fans that are like, hey, I'm going to be there through thick and thin. And it's true, and those people are great. And there are some others that are like, you know what, I'm going to buy my season tickets, but I'm not going if we're losing. And you know what, those people are great too. I wish you'd find a way to get your tickets in the hands of Bulldog fans that maybe don't ordinarily get to go to a game. But we are not a big enough fan base where we're like, well, you just, go cheer for somebody else. We need every fan we can get. And we have such pride in our baseball program, and because we are so invested in it, and it's not just a financial investment, there is an emotional investment, there is a personal investment. In some respects, you could suggest a spiritual investment when it comes to Mississippi State baseball. And so because you are so invested, you expect the team to win and win at a high level. And so when we have a year like we've had this year, we're all like, hey, this can't happen. This isn't Mississippi State baseball. And you know what? You're absolutely correct. And there were some times, we were a little bit up and down. not just this year, but, in several years past. We've been on a really good run, since 2016. This is the first time we missed the tournament since 15. And I think perhaps we thought we had outgrown that we would be immune from it. You know what? And it fell apart on us. Now, we've got a couple choices. We can find a way, my kids love this player. And that's really sweet. I was a kid one time too. And Gator Thiessen was my favorite player when I was a kid. He was my favorite player on that 85 team. Mike Kelly was my favorite player before that, But here's the thing. It's not about what you or I really want. It's a principles before personalities deal. We want and need to win. And so sometimes that means that maybe a player that I really love as a person is not going to be involved moving forward. And I'm going to get back to Skinner too. Braylen Skinner had the opportunity to stay. He wasn't pushed out. And, Braylen Skinner, as I've said this many times, the most important stolen base in Mississippi State baseball history, and one of the most endearing images of Omaha is Braylen Skinner rounding third and grinning from ear to ear as he slides in the home plate to beat the University of Texas. Thus, the JUCO Bandits were born, right? We got some amazing memories with Braylen Skinner, but in some ways, it would be very selfish of us to want Braylen Skinner to stay. And say, but Steve, no, but you. I don't want Braylen Skinner to stay and appear in another 20 games when he has the opportunity to go play in every game somewhere else. We've got an amazing memory with Braylen Skinner, and as I wrote yesterday, he will be able to come out to Polk Dement Stadium every year the rest of his life and getting a standing ovation from our wonderful fans. And he deserves that. And we share an incredible experience together. But I don't want him just to hang around for the photo ops. I want the kid to have a chance to play. Now, he's tried for 2 years to break in and be an everyday outfielder for Mississippi State. Now, that didn't happen. And so I'm sure he and his family have had to sit down and kind of talk about it. Well, Bray, what do you want to do? Well, I want to play. I want to play. Because maybe if I can get on the field somewhere else, maybe I can get a chance to go get drafted maybe next year. Perhaps get an undrafted free agent contract and have a chance to go play beyond the college level. That's not going to happen if he stays here as a reserve outfielder. It's not. And so a lot of times people think, oh, I hate this. Well, we hate it because we're being a little bit selfish. And some would say, well, Stevie should have played more this year. When he did play, other than the Tennessee weekend, he really kind of struggled. He did. And it's one of those things, too. I'm not going to sit here and besmirch the reputation of a guy that's given his all to Mississippi State baseball. I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to tell you this, too. You will not find a Mississippi State baseball player that'll tell you anything negative about Braylen Skinner. I'm happy for Braylen. I'm sad for us, because it's like the end of an era, right? Right? You know what I'm saying? It's like you kind of get used to these guys being around. But again, that's about me. It's about you. It may not be what's best for Braylen Skinner. And so again, he was given the opportunity to stay. He has elected to go to the portal. He could always take his name out, but I don't expect him to. And to be honest with you, I don't want him to. And it's not because I'm ready to see him leave. I'm ready to see him play. And if he's not going to play here, I would rather he go somewhere else and play and further his own baseball interest than just sit around here so, we can all get our picture made with him. So let's run through some guys that, kind of comings and goings, I guess, when it comes to these transfers. How about that? All right, so here is our list of departures so far. Catcher Gray Bain, right-hand pitcher Mikey Tepper, and he was the guy, too, that we were really high on coming out of Fort Mill, South Carolina. It just hadn't come together. Guy's got electric stuff. His control hadn't been there. Left-handed pitcher Taylor Montiel, and he was a bit of a developmental guy, and I think that he's a guy that you'll see pitching for somebody, and maybe he goes to JUCO this year. Don't know. He's a guy that knows to get on the field, but I don't think you've heard the last of Taylor Montiel. I just don't. Left-handed pitcher Bradley Wilson, another guy, left-handed arm. Those guys come at a premium. They do. I think everybody knows that. Left-handed pitcher Andrew Walling. Man, it's been a nightmare of a year for the kid. It really has been. He turned down money to go be drafted last year. And this time last year is what we were talking about. You had the big four, right? And people were like, Steve, who do you think's the one guy we got a chance to? I said, Andrew Walling. We ended up getting him, but it hadn't worked out. It just hadn't come together. And I've talked to some college baseball people and some pro scouts that have said, it's about repetitive motion for him. That his plant foot is everywhere. He's a big, long, lean guy, throws really hard, but mechanically he's a bit of a mess. And we hadn't been able to get him cleaned up. And now add in right-handed pitcher Jack Walker, outfielder Trey Revy Higgins, outfielder Matt Corder, outfielder Braylen Skinner, and infielder Davis Mesh. And so those guys are moving on. That's part of the deal. You start doing the math and you start thinking, okay, well, how many guys from last year's team are going to be back? I would submit to you it's probably about 15. Maybe less. Now, I've got it on good authority. We're not expecting any more transfers, and that's not to say that a kid's not going to come up here in a week or two and say, I think I'm going to go. Everybody's had their, exit interviews and that sort of stuff, so that's kind of behind you now. So I feel like you guys kind of know where they stand, and I think the staff knows kind of where they stand with guys too. And so let's run through the list here real quickly on the roster. Basically who we think will be back and who won't. I think Casey Hunt is back. Casey may be a late pick, but I think Casey needs another year. Jess Davis, of course, was a grad transfer. He and R.J. Yoga are both gone. Aaron Downs, a guy we think a lot of, he'll be back. Cameron James, I expect Cam to get drafted and signed. Brandon Smith, not sure what to expect with him. I don't think he gets drafted. I think Brandon's back. I think Brandon's probably back. Drew McGowan, I've had somebody tell me that Drew might actually end up going to medical school. He's an extremely intelligent guy, and that he may not come back next year. And he may not go in the portal. He may just go ahead and finish his degree and get into an advanced degree somewhere. But I've had somebody tell me that Drew may give up baseball, not because he's disenchanted, but he's just kind of ready to get on with life. Pico Khan, we know that he'll be back. Feel really great about him. He'll challenge on the weekend. Trey Higgins mentioned he's gone. We expect Kellum Clark to be back, barring something crazy in the draft. I've actually spoken directly with some people in his family. Kellum is living his dream playing at Mississippi State. I don't think he'll be drafted high enough to sign this year. Davis Mesh has transferred. Of course, Matt Corder has transferred. Cade Smith, expecting him back, probably your Friday or Saturday guy next year. I think Cole Cheatham, a left-handed pitcher from Ardmore, Alabama. I think Cole is a guy that'll be a real factor for us next year. Had a couple of up and down outings late, but when given the chance to pitch, Cole's around the plate. I think there's something to build on there with him. Stone Simmons will be back. I don't expect Stone to be available to pitch until we probably get into SEC play at the soonest. Very, very serious surgery for him. So he won't pitch in the fall. And then we'll kind of see how he goes, how he's going first of the year when we get into spring. But I wouldn't expect to see him on the mound until we get maybe into SEC play, probably into the month of March. Jack Walker, of course, is transferred. Logan Tanner will be drafted in the first 3 rounds of the MLB draft. A lot of people said he had a first-round grade on him. I'm kind of hearing more second round right now. Luke Hancock, this is going to be interesting. He's a senior in the classroom, a junior on the field. He's got a year of eligibility left. I think Luke is probably gone, but I won't be surprised if he comes back. I think it's going to matter of when he gets drafted, what he wants to do. Because maybe he can come back next year, and you get that senior, super senior saver deal. You don't get the big signing bonus, and that's the thing you got to think about. Landon Sims, of course, will not be back, and he will be a first-round draft pick. Slade Alford expected to be back, be your starting third baseman next year. Got to get the hitting aspect of it down too. Gray Bain, as already mentioned, has transferred. Jackson Fristow not going anywhere unless he's drafted. I've got that on good authority too. Spoke with the family. He is happy at Mississippi State. Didn't have his best year last year. He knows that, has some things he wants to work on. He wants to come back and compete for an opportunity to get back into the starting rotation. He's going to work hard this summer. So unless he gets drafted high enough to go, which I don't expect, he'll be back. Mentioned Taylor Montiel and Andrew Walling as transfers. Von Siebert, I'm told, will be back. He'll have a chance to compete. Of course, it's always nice to have a left-handed bat off the bench, even if he doesn't earn a starting spot. Tanner Leggett, a senior, he moves on. I got one of the biggest hits in the history of our program. Parker Stinnett, a senior in the classroom, a junior in eligibility. I do expect him back. He had the injury, and while I haven't got anybody to really drill it down, I'm told it wasn't Tommy John. So it doesn't look like it'll be one of these things where he'll be unavailable once we get into the fall. We don't hope so, and we think we have a chance to get him back. And he's a guy, too, at times, very, very good. Brad's going to sign. He's a senior in the classroom, a junior on the field. Brad's going to sign. There are a lot of scouts out there that really like him. Preston Johnson, a junior in the classroom and a sophomore on the field, so he's actually got 2 years of leverage. I expect Preston back. I just don't think he goes high enough. But you never know. I mean, all it takes is one team to love him. Braylen Skinner, of course, as we mentioned, is transferred. Bryce Chance from MRA, expected him back. From what I understand, he's going to play for Coach Polk this summer on the summer league circuit. Mikey Tepper, Bradley Willis, we've mentioned his guys that have moved on. Lane Forsythe still here. Excited about that. At his best year as a Bulldog, and I think next year could be a year where he really makes a jump. Defensively, he's elite. Hunter Hines, of course, will be a freshman All-American when those lists are finally announced. Cam Tuller, a senior in the classroom, a junior on the field. I'm not sure what Cam went through senior day stuff. I don't expect him back. And, of course, Drew Talley was a senior. He's exhausted his eligibility. And then Brooks Auger, of course, a sophomore that got injured this year. He'll be back. Not exactly sure what his recovery time frame looks like. But, running through the numbers here, it is a dramatic rebuild, and some of that is because of the fact that we have so many seniors. You start looking at their eligibility here, you start running these things down. I mean, you had 4 guys that were seniors all the way. What I mean by that is their eligibility. And then when you look at the academic side of things, you start counting these things down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 guys that were seniors. In the classroom. And of those, the only one that really has some eligibility left back that I expect to be utilized is Brandon Smith. And again, it's going to depend on where he's drafted. I'm a Brandon Smith fan. I know that last couple outings were a little bit shaky, but Brandon's a guy that usually keeps the ball down. And I think that Brandon's a guy, too, that could really help us if he comes back next year. That's your returning roster rundown. And again, I don't expect any more transfer outs. I think at this point, anything else would be a surprise. Maybe Cam Tuller elects to go in. But I don't know that we expect him back either way. And again, I don't know. I don't know what he's thinking right now. And of course, he's got his degree, went through senior day festivities, but kind of is what it is. Let's get into today's top 10 list. And we're not doing music today. How about that? Roy is on vacation. And so rather than kind of burden with Roy with having to go back and look and grab things and put them on the Spotify list, we're going to do some movies today. We're going to change it up a little bit today. How about that? You excited about that? Well, you should be. So the top 10 list brought to you by closewithblair.com. That's C-L-O-S-E with Blair, B-L-A-I-R.com. And Blair Chandler is a mortgage professional. A lot of people in the mortgage business. Blair's a mortgage professional. This is a guy that can get things done. Top 1% close ratio in the country 2 years running. It's a guy that's seen a lot of non-conforming borrowers, some atypical properties, some very complicated cases. But because he knows how to go talk to underwriters and kind of get your loan approved and see what needs to be done. 21 years in the industry. 21. Works for Fairway Mortgage, recently voted number 1 in customer satisfaction when it comes to mortgage lending. And here's the thing, too. Blair is going to give you some incentive to do business with him. If you listen to this show, no matter who you cheer for, you mentioned to him, you heard about him on the Boneyard, he'll pay for your appraisal. A lot of people out there want your business. He's willing to prove it. He'll pay for your appraisal. It's about a $500 value. Give Blair a call or text today at 601-500-2344. Again, that's 601-500-2344. Visit him today at closewithblair.com. All right, today's top 10 list. I am still, like the rest of you in the nation, I am still enamored with Top Gun Maverick. Went and saw it. Matter of fact, my younger son Ian and his friends went and saw it for the second time yesterday. Second biggest Memorial Day box office opening in the history of the world. How about that? Who saw that coming? So in honor of that, we're going to do our top 10 Tom Cruise movies. I don't think we've ever done this list before. You know, in the infancy of the top 10 list, we would not just do music. And then we've done, because we do what kind of you guys ask for, but sometimes, I'll throw a curveball at you guys. But so top 10 Tom Cruise movies. When you've got a blockbuster like this, you may have to readjust your list anyway. So here are some of my favorites that didn't make the list. And, Tom Cruise has been in, 30 some odd movies. It's crazy to think, the success that guy has had. All the Right Moves. I loved the movie. He's Steph, and of course, ends up getting him a chance to play college football. But he and Leah Thompson were the hot item. But All the Right Moves came out when I was just a teenager. We loved that movie. Eyes Wide Shut with Nicole Kidman. Kind of a crazy, kind of erotic type thriller. Pretty wild movie. Very different than the Tom Cruise catalog. I really like Nicole Kidman's performance more than Tom's, but pretty crazy. Mission Impossible, and that's become a franchise. I didn't want to list them all, but I didn't have that in the top 10. I know some of you will be like, Steve, the cinematography is so great, the action's great, and Tom Cruise has some of his own You're right. I just like some other ones better. The Outsiders, and I loved the book. I loved the movie. I love Tom's performance in The Outsiders. That movie is so action-packed with so many great characters. C. Thomas Howell and Matt Dillon and Ralph Macchio. Stay golden, Pony Boy. The Color of Money. That's another one that narrowly missed the list. Great Eric Clapton song on that soundtrack, too. So here we go. Top 10 Tom Cruise movies. And I know that I'm going to get a lot of slack about this one, and I'm prepared for it. I'm here for it. Number 10 for me, the John Grisham thriller, The Firm. Love it. I love the ending. A lot of other people feel like the ending, they kind of shortchanged just a little bit. It shows you how little you know about John Grisham writing. Number 9, I loved his performance, but I think Cuba Gooding Jr. may have been the star of this, but we're going with Jerry Maguire. There were some parts in it, like it was a little bit too frou-frou for me. I loved the movie, I do. I remember I was living in Lafayette, Louisiana. I went and saw it, and I got kind of emotional after it because it makes you remember what matters most in life. It really does. Remember Rod got hurt. Rod Tidwell got hurt. Everybody thought he was dead. But he wasn't. Number 8, Days of Thunder. Love this movie. When I catch it on TV sometimes late at night, I'll watch it again. And Rowdy Jordan is named after a character in Days of Thunder. But Cole Trickle, that was Tom Cruise's role. It's a great one. Great. I believe that's when he met Nicole Kidman for the first time. I think that's right. Number 7, one of the greatest movies in many respects of all time, and it's Tom Cruise is in so many of them. But it's Rainman with Dustin Hoffman. A remarkable movie. The comedic timing in this movie is just incredible. It is a wonderful film. Number 6, When We All Fell in Love with Rebecca De Mornay, which back in our teenage years, we kind of fell in love with everybody. But Risky Business. Number 6, Risky Business. And everybody knows Old Time Rock and Roll from Bob Seger a lot from that one. Kind of revitalized that song and introduced it to a new generation. Number 5, one of the great love stories of my generation. I don't know that it gets enough credit. It is a great, great, great movie. I've watched this so many times, and Elizabeth Shue proved that she was more than just Allie from Karate Kid. It's Cocktail. Number 4 on the list, the brand new one, Top Gun Maverick. I know many of you are saying that you like the new one better than the first one. I disagree because I think the second one is great because it built on the first one. And so I would still go Top Gun Maverick a little bit farther down the list. But I love it. I do. Very emotional scene there at the end. A lot of people have told me, hey, Steve got a little dusty in the theater. Yeah, it did. It did. It's a great movie, man. Number 3, one of my favorite books, one of my favorite movies. It was all written by one of my favorite authors. It's Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire. And I think you can still watch this on Netflix. It recently was added to the queue. Maybe that ran out last month. Interview with the Vampire. Brad Pitt, Kirsten Dunst. It was an incredible crew. Antonio Banderas was Armand. It is a great film. It is a fantastic book. If you don't know Anne Rice, and we lost Anne last year, the world's a little bit of a darker place because of Anne, because she lived and because she died, right? And what I mean by that is she kind of romanticized the vampire, mystique. And so there was like this, dark corners, I guess, in the literary community that she kind of was part of. And then in addition to that, her talent is now gone. Just an unsurpassed talent. And lived in New Orleans, which was perfect, right? Made perfect sense. Number 2, because you can't handle the truth, It's A Few Good Men. I love that movie. I have probably seen that 100 times or more. It's so great. And I love Demi Moore too. I absolutely do. But one of the things that I loved about Demi Moore and A Few Good Men is they didn't really fashion her as like a sex symbol, right? It's like she was a professional woman. She was a litigator in a JAG Corps. And they never even kind of pursued that. They never did anything in any way whatsoever to make it seem kind of exploited, like she was just eye candy. She was very much, as Joe Galloway, a huge part of that movie based on her merits as an attorney. And I think it's great to kind of see her in that role, because there have been some other ones, where they kind of paint her out to be the party girl and everything else, and we all saw St. Elmo's Fire in those movies too. And I think, again, it really showed that she's a very serious actor. It's not one of these things where she's just there on her looks. I'm a huge Demi Moore fan. Maybe we should do a top 10 list of her movies. But number 1, it's got to be Top Gun. It has to be. It's an iconic movie. And there's so many people now that are going back and thinking, oh my gosh, now I see why my parents thought the 80s were so cool. And I say this with as much love and admiration for you guys as I can. But I grew up in the greatest generation in American pop culture. It's true. Now, we didn't have Apple Music and TiVo and DVR. We didn't have any of that stuff. But, man, we had movies and bands that rocked. And so I am very proud to be a child of the 80s. I guess I'm a child of the 70s and a teen of the 80s. But I loved it, man. And it's like the more I look back on all, I know everybody thinks their generation and their senior class is the best, and there's all this kind of stuff. I get it. But I think when you look at what's reintroduced to young people today, when people go back on, oh my gosh, I found this. Are you kidding me? The Breakfast Club? Like my kids love that movie. And there are so many times my kids would rather watch those 80s classics and watch something that's a little more contemporary. I think a lot of it, too, is because there was just a coolness in the 80s. We were kids that grew up in the shadow of the Cold War. I think people forget that. It's like, I remember as a kid, and maybe it's because I was so sensitive in one of these South Mississippi families that we always felt like something bad was going to happen. But it's like every news time we turned on the news, there was all this fear porn and things like that, and all these people the Russians are doing this and the Russians are doing that, and there's going to be nuclear war, and we're going to die, and we're going to all rot. And they're going to kill us. We had this inferiority complex. And then Ronald Reagan wins the Cold War. Next thing you know, communism is nearly stamped out globally. All these Eastern Bloc countries broke off. The former Soviet republics became independent countries. And it was like it was a changing time in our life, but we grew up with that. And if you go back and look at those early 80s movies, there's so much of that too, where the Russians were the foils. They were the antagonist. I mean, you go back and look like No Retreat, No Surrender. I mean, Jean-Claude Van Damme was an Eastern European martial artist. Those guys are painted to be the villains. It was always this us versus them mentality. And I think because of that, I think there was always this kind of pro-American sentiment that we can do it, that we are the cool kids. And so I think that kind of bled over into pop culture. And we were so blessed to have so many talented people. And it's really gotten watered down. It has. It's like nowadays anybody can get a record deal, and if you can't, you can go put your own music on iTunes. And listen, I'm a firm believer in all that. Let's shine a light on everybody's talent. But we celebrate a lot of mediocrity these days. That wasn't really the case in the 80s. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I loved everything that was on Top 40. But when you look back, I mean, it's like we had so many iconic bands and movies in the 80s, and they're coming back around. How cool is that? Again, thanks to our friends at closewithblair.com for sponsoring today's Top 10 list. If you have an idea for the Top 10 list, reach out and let me know. Better yet, find Roy at Dogmatic67 on Twitter. That's DAWGMATIC 67, and send him your idea. And then he'll communicate with me, he'll put it on a list. Because if you send it to me, I can't guarantee I'll get it to Roy to get it on the list, and I'll forget. So there you go. Top 10 Tom Cruise movies. Hope you guys, if you hadn't had a chance to go see Top Gun Maverick, you should. You owe it to yourself to go, for sure. Before we get too far away, and I hate to do this, I meant to do it earlier. I got disjointed when we had the news break about the new transfers. We've been expecting that for a day now. But I wanted to give our Prime Shrimp Player of the Game award to Braylen Skinner. And again, I know that he's moving on, and we support him in doing so. He's got to do what's best for him. And sometimes what's best for Mississippi State may not be best for an individual player. But we're very grateful that Braylen Skinner came our way. Braylen was a fan favorite, and I always, every time he came to the plate, the ovation that he got at home was very special. It really was. And I want to thank our fans for doing that. Braylen will go down in Mississippi State history. He's a guy that scored one of the biggest runs, had the biggest stolen base in Bulldog history, and scored one of the most important runs in the history of our program. And he'll always have a home here at Mississippi State. PrimeShrimp.com, that's your first and last stop when it comes to high-quality shrimp. Rather than go bother with store-bought shrimp, you got to go buy it and devein it and everything. You think, well, I just keep forgetting to order. Listen, you owe it to yourself. Trust me today. Just give them an opportunity. You don't have to go get a freezer full of it, right? But what you can do is order. They'll package it up. They'll send it to you. They're in these neat little pouches. The tails are gone. The veins are gone. The peel is gone. These are ready-to-cook shrimp delivered directly to your door, courtesy of PrimeShrimp.com. It's a New Orleans-based company that they've been peeling shrimp since the 1940s. 4 great flavors to choose from. You can have delicious shrimp on your dinner table in 10 minutes or less without all the prep and cleanup. I'm telling you, there are so many products out there that promise a good game. These guys don't just talk it, they walk it. A great, great, great product. And here's the thing, you get a money-back guarantee. If you don't love it, they'll give you your money back. And free shipping on all orders over 4 pounds. You don't have to get that much, but if you do, they'll save you some money. And let us save you some money, too. Use promo code Boneyard to save some money when you go to PrimeShrimp.com. Save some money off that order. Again, that's PrimeShrimp.com. An exciting program, an exciting product. And we thank them, as always, for sponsoring our Prime Shrimp Player of the Game. And again, we didn't play a game, but we want to tip our cap to our buddy Braylen Skinner as he moves on from the Mississippi State baseball program. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by your friends at Campus Book Mart. You know Campus Book Mart. You should by now. It is a Starkvillian institution nestled up on the backside of campus. You take that turn off of 182 by the State Trooper section. Next thing you know, boom, there you are, on your way to campus. Be sure and go check them out. The lovely, talented Susie, Miss Kathy Brown, is an incredible buyer when it comes to all Mississippi State merchandise. Miss Pam Minyard, everybody up there will treat you like family because in their mind you are family. And because you are family, they're one of those situations where it's like, hey, we understand the expectations of our wonderful fans, so they always make sure you've got the newest and latest and freshest in Mississippi State merch. If you can't make it to town, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net, courtesy of Al Gore's Internet. And by using the Boneyard as your primary source for podcasting when it comes to Bulldogs, we'll save you a little money. The primary promo code, is Boneyard. No, it's not. It's BSR. How about that? I got confused. Promo code Boneyard is incorrect. Promo code BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. I was just making sure you're paying attention. That'll get you free shipping on all orders over $50. Any order less than $50, absolutely incomplete. So correctly, visit campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR, to save on shipping on all orders over $50. Football season will be here before you know it. And you know, Mom, the kids all want some fresh MSU threads before summer vacation, too. Everybody wants to go swimming, but you want that new and fresh T-shirt. You know, if you're in Fort Walton, you're going down to Evans Island or whatever, you're going to dinner, you want to be able to rep the Bulldogs. Take care of them. Order yourself something too, Mom. Go ahead and do it. You get my permission. If your husband fusses at you, give him my number. Tell him to call me. I'll take care of it. Again, that's campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR. So we've got some people leaving. We also have some people, kind of coming in. And I think it's important, too, that we understand, based on the information that we have, we don't expect any other transfer outs. We don't think that's going to happen. Let me just say, we're pretty well sourced on the topic. Now, any other transfer at this point would be a surprise. So we feel good about where we are. Now, we picked up a commitment today. Right-handed pitcher Landon Gartman from the University of Memphis. Now, he is a Mississippi native. How about that? A guy that grew up wanting to play at Mississippi State, didn't get the opportunity the first two times. A product of the Mississippi Junior College system, signed on with Memphis with Coach Rock up there. Coach Joe and Rock retired this year. And, Memphis, that program has kind of been a little bit of a flux. But we faced Gartman in our midweek game against those guys. But going back a couple of years, he was the 2020-21 Mississippi Association of Community Colleges Pitcher of the Year, and then named the D2 JUCO Pitcher of the Year. How about that? That's pretty cool for Pearl River Community College, just down the road from my hometown of Columbia, Miss. Matter of fact, I got a lot of former classmates that are PRC graduates. My mom is a PRC graduate. How about that? But Gartman, originally from Boca Chica, Mississippi. You've all floated to Boca Chica. You know it's good people down there, right? You talk about true Mississippi. There is not more true Mississippi than Boca Chica. If you have not floated to Boca Chica, you have not lived. I've floated it several times. I can't count the times I got drunk and sunburned floating to Boca Chica. I'm not saying you got to get drunk, but you can go float to Boca Chica and have a great time. A great time. And the Gartman family has spent some time floating to Boca Chica. But Boca Chica, Mississippi, nestled in down there in the Pine Belt. And so he went to Enterprise. I believe that's correct. The Enterprise Attendance Center. That's right. Yeah, played for Cass Brister. Yeah. So he's been well coached. He's from a great part of the state. And the guy can pitch. So he makes the move. And it's interesting, too, you look at all this stuff, you're not exactly sure, kind of because of the COVID year. It looks to me that he is going to be a junior because he is 3 years removed from high school because 2020 didn't count. And so in 2019 to 20, he made 4 appearances there at Pearl River. And then in the 2020 to 2021 season, he went 9-0 with a 1.95 ERA and 12 appearances, 11 of them starts, 81 strikeouts against just 21 walks. We're talking 4-1 there in 60 innings. So a little bit over a strikeout per, which junior college stats are kind of skewed more towards a swing and miss. A lot of swing and miss in Mississippi JUCO. But this is a guy, too, you look at it and say, okay, well, he didn't just do it in the Mississippi JUCO. He actually went and did it at Memphis. And one of the things that I always look at, too, when we talk about Mississippi guys, is Gartman was a product of the East Coast Sox. That is one of the premier traveling baseball outfits in the country. Not just anybody can play for the East Coast Sox. You got to have some moxie about you. These guys, more times than not, are going to have a lot of prospects. So he's playing in a good organization. Comes from a great high school coaching background with Coach Brister, joins a premier traveling team at East Coast, and then he goes to the junior college level, and he kind of begins to mature. A bit of a late bloomer, I guess you could say. Now, what did he do this year? Well, I'm so glad you guys asked. Well, this year at Memphis, pretty impressive numbers here. So we take a look at it. 86 innings pitched, allowed 54 hits, so way less than a hit per. Way less. I mean, a lot of guys in the SEC, of course, it's a hit per inning. But this isn't even close. Allowed 35 runs, 34 of them earned, 29 walks against 94 Ks. So, again, right around that 4-to-1 ratio. That kind of carries over from junior college. Allowed just 12 doubles, 1 triple, and then 9 home runs. And that number's got to come down. He gave up 3 of those in one game against Wichita State. Difficult start there for him. Just 3 hit by pitches. So we're not walking a lot of guys. We're not hitting a lot of guys. That tells me he's around the plate. You got to like that. We're deep into a couple of ball games. The longest outing of the year, he had an 8-inning stint against East Carolina. And maybe you've heard of those guys. They're a top 8 national seed this year. Goes 8 innings, no hits, no runs, does have 4 walks, 10 punchies. They lose the game 4-1. I mean, just think that for a second here. We talk, well, he plays at Memphis. Okay, well, yeah, I understand that's not the best conference in the world. I mean, they only had, I think, 3 teams had a winning record this year. And there's still one big league. But he goes up there against the best they have to offer and no hits them. Won 131 pitches, and you know he wanted to come back there in the 9th. I mean, it's like he goes 8 innings, and they lose a ball game 4-1. What a heartbreaker, right? The most difficult outing of the year for him was against the University of Houston. He goes just 5 innings, 9 hits, 8 runs, 7 of those earned, 3 walks, 3 Ks, a couple doubles there. Got touched up a little bit there. They lose a wild one, 11-9. But let's go back to that Mississippi State game. He goes 4 innings against us, and then turned around and pitched against Tulane. But 4 innings in a start against us, no hits, no runs, 2 walks, 4 Ks, 1 hit by pitch. It's a pretty good outing in a midweek. And again, like I told you, he pitched against Southeastern Illinois at Edwards the weekend before, pitches against us midweek, and then turns around and pitches against Tulane. And Tulane, that's not a great program. They're making coaching change this year, but still, I mean, that's a team that we played, and they knocked us around a little bit too. He goes down there, 7 innings pitched, 6 hits, 3 runs, all earned, 3 walks, 9 Ks, allowed a couple of extra base hits. But, again, a good outing. So you look at the numbers, and it's pretty impressive stuff. And Memphis didn't have a lot around him. It wasn't a great team by any stretch of the imagination. But he goes out there and puts together a 7-1 record this year, and also had a save early in the year against Brown. That's his one appearance that wasn't a start this year. Again, pretty impressive type. And he's a guy that can do anything. That's one of the things that people tell me. Is that he could be like that Preston Johnson role of 2021 where he's the first guy of the bullpen. Or he could be a guy that could start on the weekends. I've seen some people kind of projecting him as a weekend starter. I don't know if that's fair at this point because we don't know what else is going to come out of the portal. And what they tell me is he is agreeable to doing whatever he needs to do. He's like, hey, if I got to be a mid-reliever, I'll do it. If I need to be a starter, I'll do it. Those are the kind of guys you want. When you begin to look at these, Landon Gartman too, I mean, it's like, this is a guy who was an all-conference pitcher. In that same, league as East Carolina. And again, not a great league, but Memphis had a pair of guys make the first team All-AAC. Gartman was one of them. Memphis made a pretty good run in that tournament too. But Landon Gartman, first team All-AAC. He was also the AAC Newcomer Pitcher of the Year. And it wasn't just beating up on non-conference. He's 6-1 in the league this year. 88 strikeouts in a regular season. Pretty good. Pretty good. So a good first addition from the portal. You got Nate Chester that joined here recently too, junior college transfer. So that's another newcomer too. Let's not let that get lost in the conversation because he didn't necessarily come from the portal. And again, this is an SEC bounce back. This isn't just some guy that went to JUCO. But it's interesting, it's like sometimes you get these guys right out of JUCO and you're not exactly sure what you have. And you get Nate Chester, a bounce back coming through the junior college system, and then you get a JUCO success story like Gartman, a guy that maybe wasn't highly heralded coming out of Enterprise, makes a name for himself at PRC, and then becomes an all-conference pitcher at Tulane on a losing team. That's a good start, if you ask me. And there's more to come. And we've talked recently about some of these guys at Tulane. We've talked recently about a hitter from Belmont, Guy Lipscomb. And so here's what you should expect. Let me try to break it down as best I can. So during the month of June, here is what I expect. And that's not to say that there won't be some anomalies. There will be. But by and large, I think your commitments in June will be guys that are either not draft eligible or guys that are draft eligible but are not planning to sign, if that makes sense. Because if you're Mississippi State, you don't want to go invest, let's go get this kid, and then he signs, fifth round contract, and then you lose on your second and third options. So you got to be careful in what you do. It's a very convoluted process right now for your coaching staff. Now, what we hear, like Gartman, he is draft eligible, but he is not expected to be drafted high enough to command the signing bonus to prevent him from going to school, because he will have another year to play, so he has a little bit of leverage. So we expect him to come and be able to pitch at Mississippi State this year. I don't think he is a guy that will command a top 10 round type pick. Could be a guy that goes late. And, again, we'll see. But I suspect what you're going to see, because I think it's important to kind of frame this up. I think all the transfer outs are done. And so I think the negativity, you know how that feels. It's like, we didn't make the tournament. Now this kid's leaving. And some of that is for the best. But I think now that we're through the negative aspect of it, now the transfer outs are done, you're going to start getting the good news. You're going to start getting the transfer ins. And I think the balance, in the end, the net difference is going to be a very positive for Mississippi State. And I say this with as much love and respect as I can in my voice. I believe that the players coming in are going to be better than the ones going out when it comes to the transfer portal. And we're going to lose some guys in the draft that it's going to be difficult to replace. But my point is that I think Mississippi State had some guys on the roster that were kind of dead weight. And I love all of them. I do. But this is not the Boy Scouts. And if they're not going to be able to play here, we are doing them a disservice by not really kind of letting them go transfer. Not that we can stop them. But I think sometimes you just have to be honest. When you have those end-of-the-year meetings, I would say, hey, here's the year you had. Here's what we see for our future. And if you don't think there are coaches around the country that says, hey, listen, if you want to stay, yeah, you can stay. But here's the deal. We got this guy coming in, this guy coming in, this guy's coming back. I can't promise you more playing time next year. But you're welcome to come back. We'd love to have you, as a reserve player. And then you can make a decision based on information. And so rather than kind of being selfish, especially when a guy could maybe play, at G5 or a lower level, you're almost being dishonest. Just be upfront with them. And those end-of-the-year meetings have happened, not just at Mississippi State, but around the country. And you got some of these guys like at Memphis and at Tulane. It's like, hey, I got a new coaching staff coming in. Let me just go in the portal and see. Let me see what my options are going to be. And that way, if a new coach comes in and I like him, I can always take my name out. But I could be the next Scotty DeBrule. I could be a guy from Jacksonville that goes in the portal and ends up having a chance to play in a Southeastern Conference and being part of a great team that makes a run to Omaha. I could be Michael Turner at Arkansas, where I leave Kent State. Now all of a sudden I'm a second leading hitter. I've improved my draft stock immensely. Or if I don't get that opportunity, I can go back to which I've come. When a new coach gets here, I say, hey, coach, now that you're here, I like it. I think I'm going to come out of the portal and play ball, and hopefully they'll let you come back. But you don't lose anything by going in the portal at this point because there's no coach to talk to. And I'm sure the coach that gets there is going to be like, hey, let's see if we can't get our kids out of the portal. So you kind of get the benefit of kind of playing both sides against the middle. But we're expected to get some more good news here in the next couple of weeks. I wouldn't say that there's something immediate, but I don't think the next transfer is too far removed from today. And again, it's been a busy day. 2 guys go out, 1 guy comes in. But I think from this point forward, just about everything you're going to hear for the month of June is going to be very positive about Mississippi State baseball. And let's be honest, State needs a good month. We need a good month. While everybody else is out there, working through regionals, and we wish we were, we're kind of tooling up for next year. So we've got to go out there and find those players. And there are some of the guys, let me just go and kind of put this out here. There are some guys out there that we will eventually talk to that are still playing baseball right now. You say, but Steve, how can that be? Well, everybody talks. Well, this guy may go in the portal. So there can't be any direct contact, or that would be considered tampering. But there are some players out there that are going to be playing in regionals this weekend that will go in the portal once their teams are eliminated from the tournament. Well, there's no way you would do that, right? You wouldn't do that in the middle of the tournament unless you had to. Like Young State went through that last year. We're in Omaha. We had to have guys go get in the portal to beat the July 1st deadline. So guys will play their regional. They'll make a decision, and some guys will go into the portal. And that's something that may linger on for a couple of weeks. But again, you have until July 1st to go in, and then Mississippi State obviously can get involved with you once you go into the portal. And so it's not about necessarily all the names we're discussing now over at genespage.com. There will be more names to come. And I say this, some of them are going to be names you know. And not just because you're a college baseball nerd like me. There are going to be some other names out there that are going to be seeking other opportunities that'll be from teams that perhaps that you know fairly well. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to end up at Mississippi State. But I can tell you that talking to some of our friends in the Southeastern Conference baseball circles, that there are some players on some SEC teams that are going into the portal shortly after their team is eliminated from the NCAA baseball tournament. And that's just not just one school, it's multiple schools. Multiple schools. How many of those will be targets for Mississippi State? That remains to be seen. I feel pretty comfortable about one or two of them. But I can tell you that there is a lot of talk about Arkansas. There's a lot of talk about some guys on the roster at Arkansas that maybe have gotten there and just hadn't been the best of fits that may go in the portal. I've heard some talk about a player or two at Ole Miss that may go into the portal. There was a lot of chatter about that earlier this week, and then Ole Miss makes the regional, and so now it's kind of died down, as it should. Getting ready to go play some baseball. It's a game you love. It's not about next year. It's about right now. There's some talk at LSU that there are some guys. Because what's happened now is, we had this expanded roster because of COVID, and now everybody's trying to get down, right? Because, we thought it was going to be like maybe a 2 to 3 year process where you can kind of taper back down, but they didn't do it. And so as a result, there are some teams that are going to process some guys out, and we don't really want those guys. We don't want the processed out guys. We want those guys that feel like, hey, I got to get a better opportunity somewhere else, or I see the chance to play at a place like Mississippi State better than where I am now. And there are some great baseball players in the G5 ranks. And I said that because I think it's important to understand that. There are guys that develop at different rates. One of the guys on the genespage.com baseball forum made a joke. He said, yeah, we'll let them go develop somewhere else and go get them out of the portal. Hey, that sounds like a plan to me. Isn't that what Alabama's doing in football? Then that's the big fear, right? Is, well, Alabama will they'll just go recruit kids off your team. Baseball is a little different in that respect, but Mississippi State carries a lot of weight because of you and because of our history and our tradition. And so it's like, well, yeah, I had a great career for a couple of years at Southern Miss or Tulane or Memphis or Central Florida or Texas San Antonio. But I played in front of, 1,000 people. I can go play in front of 10,000. I can be part of an incredible atmosphere. I think I owe it to myself, not to mention if I can do it at the SEC level at a place like Mississippi State, all of a sudden I've got a chance to probably be drafted. And so those are the things that sometimes I think we forget about when it comes to throwing our own weight around. We are a desirable location to come play college baseball. It's the truth. You don't think, think about this. If, let's say for an example, let's say Southern Miss. Let's say a kid from Southern Miss goes into the portal. Or even UAB. And let's say he gets offers from Mississippi State, Alabama, Auburn, and maybe even Georgia. Where do you think he's going to go if given the opportunity? Do you really think that a guy with maybe no rooting interest in Alabama would go play Alabama baseball when given a chance to play at Mississippi State? No. The same could be said of the reverse in football, right? Like if given the choice, a kid that didn't grow up a Mississippi State fan, all things being equal, they'd pick Alabama football over Mississippi State, and they should. It's the same thing in baseball. Well, I can go to Alabama, and maybe we can make the tournament, or I can go to Mississippi State. We got a chance to go to Omaha. We got a chance to compete for a national championship. Personalities are part of it too, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, it makes perfect sense. And so when Mississippi State announces they're going to be aggressive in the portal, it makes people nervous. It makes other schools out there, we're thinking, hey, well, we're going to get this kid. Well, we're not going to beat Mississippi State for him. And that's not arrogance. That's not haughtiness. That's just the reality of life. That's the pecking order in college baseball. There are a lot of teams out there that are on the same level of Mississippi State when it comes to national accomplishments. But when you look at the difference facility-wise, and you look at the fan experience and what the player experience is going to be like playing in front of this great fan base, it's like, yeah, okay. And I love this Oklahoma State team. I think they're really good. But you go look at their attendance numbers compared to ours, and Oklahoma State, in the 80s, was kind of right there with us. I contend they're one of the top 15 college baseball programs of all time. But who's going to pick Oklahoma State over coming to play at Mississippi State and Duty Noble Field in front of the greatest fans in college baseball? Not anybody, unless they have a rooting interest in Oklahoma State baseball. I mean, it's just kind of the reality of it. And so I think in many respects, Mississippi State can afford to be a little picky. Mississippi State can't afford to be impatient here. But I think that Mississippi State offer just carries a little more weight with guys. I mean, you talk to Scotty DeBrule, you talk to R.J. Yeager. I remember when I talked to Nate Chester. He just couldn't believe it. He absolutely just couldn't believe it. He said when Mississippi State's Kyle Cheeseborough texted him, he thought he was being punked. And then he calls him and he's like, these guys know who I am. They know my history. They know what I can do well. He said he was completely blown away because it's Mississippi State, the defending national champions, Duty Noble Field. I mean, how many places, honestly, if you went out and polled a bunch of college baseball players from around the country and you asked them to name maybe the top 5 college baseball parks that they know that they don't play in, how many of them do you think would say Duty Noble Field? I would say most of them. We've got a historic venue. This is the place where people want to be. And so this rebuild on this roster, I think, is going to be, number one, incredibly important. That goes without saying. But I think Chris Lemonis is going to be able to throw the M over S around with a little more authority than perhaps some other schools can with their own traditions and opportunities. And you're a big part of that. There's no doubt about it. All right, let's thank our friends at Portico. I've told you guys before, if I was moving to Starkville now, I'd move to Portico because I'd want to be closer to campus. I'm out here in the sticks. When I moved here from Baton Rouge, and it's like, I just want to have some room to myself and, be able to not have people passing by all the time. You never know in Baton Rouge. Drive-by breaks out, whatever, All that said, if I had to do it over, I'd want to be close to campus. Because I spend so much time on campus. Matter of fact, I've got a big project I'm working on right now. And I got to be on campus Friday for a little while doing some research. And I'm going to work on that article this weekend. But I would like to be close. And one of the reasons that you guys want to have a place in Starkville is to be close to Mississippi State. Well, Portico is 1.1 miles away from the Mississippi State campus. And it's the quiet side of campus. It's all kind of hustle and bustle kind of coming in on 12, right, from town, right? You make the long stretch there. You come in on 82 on the backside of 12, it's really quiet. That's where you'd live. Close enough to campus for convenience, far enough away to have a little privacy. Kind of tucked away over there. And I encourage you, go by and check it out yourself. Even if you're maybe just getting in the ballpark and thinking, maybe one day we'd like to do this. One day we'd like to have a place, but you can't wait too much longer. Phase 1 is completely sold out. Your new neighbor's already enjoying the high life here in Stark Vegas, man. Phase 2, we've already got a couple of those houses sold, and there's 10 under construction. We got some room, though, for some custom homes. Still got a chance for you to pick out a lot, pick out some house plans. And there's going to be other ones against if you just want to come get one, so you know what, Steve, I just want to have a nice home close to campus. I'm not real picky. Maybe it's going to be my retirement home. Maybe it's my second home. Maybe it's an investment property. Your needs can be met. Give my friend, your friend, Mississippi State friends, Brooks Bryan, a call today, 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. And let me tell you this, if you're looking for a home right now in Starkville and your real estate agent hasn't mentioned the Portico, you need to ask why. because you're not going to do any better. I'm just laying it out there for you. It's going to be a great opportunity for you. Go check them out. And listen, Brooks Bryan's got a lot of great Bulldog baseball stories. I don't know if you guys know this. Brooks robbed a home run against the University of Washington to send us to Omaha. He'll tell you all about it. His lovely wife, Beth, will tell you, too, that I joked when I see him, did you know that she said, do I know? It's like our living room wall. Like there's a picture the size of the house on the living room wall. And congratulations, Brooks, and thanks for that. Thank you for doing that. All right, let's get ready to get out of here. A couple more things we want to talk about. You know, the SEC meetings are going down in Destin. That'll wind down here in the next couple of days. Coaches are done now. I suspect we'll have a scheduling model that'll come out here soon. A lot of discussion about the 3-6. I don't know if that helps Mississippi State, to be honest with you, because we need those 4 non-conference games to make sure we're going to be bowl eligible. If we go to non-conference games, it's going to be difficult for us some years to get to 6 wins. I mean, I'm just laying it out there. That's just kind of the reality of life, especially in down years for us. So I don't know that that's good for us. And that's a real challenge. Now, the flip side of it is we're not going to have to play Alabama every year, from what I hear. You have your 3 permanents. Well, so who would we get? Well, Ole Miss would be one. Then Ole Miss would get LSU. That's what they would want. I don't think LSU cares. LSU and Alabama has been the highest watched college football game in the regular season, I think 5 years running. I think the league would want LSU and Alabama together because it drives up the TV revenue. What does State get? Do we get Auburn? Do we get A&M? I'd be okay keeping A&M, wouldn't you? So we get Ole Miss, A&M, and somebody else. Maybe we get Ole Miss, A&M, and LSU. I don't know how LSU people would feel about that, but I think they'd be happy to have the Mississippi schools, and I think some other people would be unhappy that they had both Mississippi schools. So we'll see. We'll see what the model looks like. But at the end of the day, it basically, people have said, well, we're not doing pods. This basically is the pod. You're just not rotating pods. You're rotating your non-permanent opponents. And when we went back in the beginning, this is so funny too. Years ago, you had permanent opponents. So we had 2 in the East, right? So we had Vandy and Kentucky. And everybody's like, hey, well, State wins the West, and they didn't have to play Georgia or Florida. Well, you guys picked the teams. Wasn't us. But you're going to have some years like that. Give me Missouri. Let me get Ole Miss, A&M, Missouri. How about that? I'd be good with that, wouldn't you? Be great. But either way, change is coming. And there are a lot of people out there that say, well, you had that dead weekend right before rivalry week. I'm okay with it. I don't need all of that. And the thing that I think about, too, and I mentioned this on Jay Wimberly's show, what does that do for college football? All of a sudden, you don't have the SEC schools writing that big check for FCS teams, and in some cases, G5 teams. What happens to those teams' athletic budget? I think Jimbo Fisher mentioned that today earlier, too, and I had already – my line of thinking was already trending in that direction. There's no RPI in college football. And I think it's a great thing that we have played the SWAC schools in our state because they are, by and large, comprised of Mississippi players. And so we're basically investing in our own state. And I think it's a good thing when State and Ole Miss, especially in football, will play those schools and help put some money in their coffers and kind of ease a little bit of the economic strain. There's not a lot of budget that goes around in the FCS. And so if we're going to have to write that check anyway, rather than write it to Gardner Webb or McNeese State, I would much rather write that check to a Mississippi institution. To me, that makes the most sense. And I think Scott Strickland's the one that kind of began to kind of walk down that line. And I think it is the right thing to do. We're investing in student athletes in Mississippi, even ones not on our own campus. It is the right thing to do. So what does Alcorn State do? How do they go find that game? Now, do you think they're going to be able to go sign a deal with Texas? And not to mention, think about all the times that we've had, think of Justin Malone, for an example. Justin Malone was a great guard at Mississippi State. One of Justin Malone's first experiences on the Mississippi State campus was coming to watch his brother play Mississippi State when he was at Alcorn State. And so you get these families and you get their younger brothers that may develop into an SEC athlete, and all of a sudden it's like, man, one of my greatest memories as a kid was going to watch my brother play at Mississippi State. So they leave here with a positive experience. And so I'm very much a proponent of playing the FCS game for multiple reasons. Number one, we need to win. But number two, I think it's good for everybody involved. That's my honest opinion. Now, another thing that you need to be mindful of too, based on some conversations with some sources close to the conversation, this scholarship model they put out now, there's a good chance that thing passes by August. Now, I don't know when the drop dead date would be. Like, okay, is it going to start this year? I would think there's probably a possibility of that happening since we're going to do it in August. Now, that's what everybody's still figuring out. We're kicking this thing down to the leagues. And so part of that, you recall, is football. No 25 annual limit. We knew that something like that was going to have to happen. You know, this year they had the little one-year exception rule where you could exceed the 25 limit. Well, with the portal being what it is, when, let's say, for an example, a coach gets fired or leaves or whatever, and 25 players get in the portal, well, it's impossible for a school to make that up, right? Because, you got 20 guys go in the portal and you got 25 graduating, it could decimate your roster. And so now what they're basically saying is, okay, the portal's here to stay, so we're going to let you sign as many as you need to, provided you stay under the 85 limit. And as long as we're going to allow the portal to be what it is, and I think it's pretty safe to say it is here to stay, you can't have this one-year exception. You got to get a solution, a permanent solution. And that's what that does. On the baseball side of things, and this is what I think is most interesting, we've got to decide what the squad size is going to be. And then you can decide how you want to fully fund it. So they're going to kick that, if the plan passes, and we expect that it will, if they kick it down, the SEC will then decide if they want to allow teams to fully fund baseball. And so then there would be a number. Like it's 11.7 now. Let's say it's 25. Let's say it's 22. Let's say it's 19. Whatever it is, the schools will then be able to do it. And here's the thing about it, too. Most of our baseball student athletes at Mississippi State, most of them earn some academic money, too. And so then you could stack the academic aid on top of the financial aid from this athletic scholarship, and you could do a partial scholarship, which is what we used to do years ago. But it's like now all of a sudden, if we went, so this kid's going to get a 50% scholarship academic, well, I can give him 50% and then give somebody else. Now, you could just decide, you know what, we'll just put everybody on full scholarship. But to make sure that you're Title IX compliant, you're going to have to make sure that you offset that, maybe with soccer or softball. And I'm told that softball doesn't want fully funding. And what I mean by that is they don't feel like they need 25 grants. And I think we've got to do something for softball as a sport anyway. But I think Mississippi State's got to be involved in all that. And maybe on women's track, you got to be able to offset that. But once we get through August, and ultimately too, I think the SEC will have a plan kind of pending the August approval. Okay, this is what we're going to do should you choose to do it. Now, there are a lot of schools out there like, Ole Miss has women's rifling. We don't have that. Not everybody has, like Vanderbilt doesn't have softball. We don't have gymnastics. And so people have to kind of decide how they want to offset this to remain Title IX compliant. But scheduling change is 100% coming. Scholarship change is 100% coming. And NIL is 100% coming. And I'll tell you this thing, too, and this is kind of the dirty little secret behind this whole NIL thing and nobody wants to talk about. You talk to some people involved in college athletics, and they'll tell you there are not a lot of student athletes that really want to go do anything for the NIL money. He said, but Steve, well, most of this money is not substantial. I mean, when you're a broke college student, any money should be substantial. But if they're getting the Alston Award, for the academics, I mean, you got to think that's over $5,000 there, and I don't have to do anything but go to class and make good grades, and I get that money for free. there's a lot of apathy, and that's the word that it was used to describe to me. There is some NIL apathy among average players in college athletics. It's like, okay, I've got this study hall and this workout, and this mandatory thing here, and I've got class and I've got a lab. Oh, I got to go do this on top of that? So it's hard to kind of fit that in, because the way the NIL program works, and contrary to the belief of many, is both sides have to benefit from the agreement. You can't just give somebody money. I know there's some people out there that want to do that, but that's not how it works. So in order, say for an example, if I want to give, a Mississippi State baseball player some money to go, advertise my books, well, he's got to go do something for me. Whether they go to book signings, make a personal appearance, do social media postings, and it's got to be fair market value. I can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to give this kid $10,000 and he can send a tweet for me. No, it's got to be something that is commensurate value. Let's say for an example, like with Landon Sims, if I'd had Landon Sims go with me on book signings and had him sign books and say, okay, Landon, we're going to pay you, a couple $100 an appearance, come for an hour. You don't think you guys would have turned out not just to get my signature, but get Landon's too as well? But I couldn't just say, okay, Landon, I'm going to give you $10,000. He'd have to do something. All of that is being talked about. And it's like the conference has to kind of get some agreements in place before, the NCAA summer meetings. But change is coming. And we have made a mess. And I'll be honest with you, guys, I have been critical of Greg Sankey about certain things in the past, especially on the officiating side. I do think Greg Sankey is a great leader. I think Greg Sankey is an agent for change. I think Greg Sankey will help lead not just the SEC, but college athletics into a more profitable and equitable future. And I think all of this is kind of unfolding kind of as we speak. And so I encourage you guys, pay special attention. There will be some proposals that probably come out later in the week of what to expect. And then, of course, as we get a little bit later into the NCAA summer meetings and things like that, and the Transformation Committee kind of meets again, and then those things are voted on, it's going to be a very important summer. And not just for college baseball or for college football scheduling, but there's going to be some major changes made in college athletics as a whole. And so it's not going to be just the status quo. We've wanted change, and the NCAA has to change, or they're going to end up losing school. They're going to end up losing membership. And it's just a matter of time, I think, if they don't become more receptive to what's best for the member institutions, that the member institutions will say, you know what, we're just going to go form our own super conference and move on. It's all part of the puzzle. But be mindful of that as we kind of get going forward. So a lot of things that are being discussed down in Destin that are kind of a precursor for change later this summer. All right, that's it for today. Listen, I will be at Lemuria Books on Saturday at 1:30. So if you're looking to get signed books, we've had a problem with the website. They're working on getting that fixed. Contact your local bookstore till we get that back up and operational. But if you're in the Jackson or Central Mississippi area, come to Lemuria Books at 1:30 on Saturday. I love going to Lemuria Books. It is my favorite bookstore in the state of Mississippi. I've been an incredible institution for many years, and I'm always so humbled to go in there and work with John Evans. So if you're looking for Father's Day gifts, come down and see me on Saturday. If you can't make it, you can contact them and pre-order and tell them how you want your book signed, and I'll sign it while I'm there. Or maybe while I'm there, if you're like, oh, we're hustling to get there and we can't make it, just call them, and then you can pay over the phone. I'll sign it. You can pick the book up at your leisure. So it's Lemuria Books in Jackson this Saturday, 1:30. StarkVillains.com website's up and running good. So if you need some Stark Villains gear for Dad, be sure and use that as well. That's StarkVillains.com. Hey, guys, that's it. Sorry for the late show today. I'm going to try to be earlier on Friday. I've got some things I can't talk about yet. Of course, there's some things we're in negotiations with, and there's a lot going on right now. It dominated a lot of my day, and so I apologize for the late show. I will do my best to get you guys taken care of earlier on Friday. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.